my parents about to come home. Holy crap! And now my dog is walking towards me as if he wants to get out of the house. So here we go. Hold on. Let me let my dog out. All right, Kingdom, you want to go outside? Be free! Be free! Woo! Be free! Okay, so I wanted to do one more entry before I went off into my deep slumber and watching anime before I go to sleep. So I decided to talk about those sorts of shows. And I think everybody has those that they absolutely fell in love with at first, but then throughout the course of the anime, for whatever reason, it stopped being the same. You stopped loving it. You started disliking it. And there's a few examples of this. Several examples, actually, in my own life. I'm going to pick on two in particular that I felt were particularly gratuitous, I guess you could say, where it was fantastic at first. It was exceptional. And then it just went downhill, and I don't understand what went wrong. I know what went wrong, but I was really upset in the direction that they took these particular shows. So, without further ado, let's get down into Caleb's disappointments. Because everybody wants to hear about these. I mean, these are exciting. All right, first off, how many of you have actually seen Serial Experiments Lane? Okay, raise your hand, everybody in front of your computer. Clap. Maybe I can hear you. Okay, you clapping right there. All right, you've seen Serial Experiments Lane. This is considered one of the masterpieces of anime. It just generally is. People look at this as being a masterstroke. The first 4 or 5 episodes of this series I thought were absolutely beautiful, were wonderful. I even found it to a great extent moving. It's sort of strange to say Serial Experiments Lane is moving. It's very sort of cold, mechanical sort of show, but it was so interesting to me. My mind was boggling out of my eyeballs when I was watching it. It was the sort of thing where I could study like every frame. And I was like, this is incredible. This is a phenomenal show. I can't believe that, I hadn't watched this show before. This is the very reason why I watch anime. You end up getting into it, and I think the moment I thought things started going wrong was right when it started to get into this whole... There was an entire episode, and this isn't even much of a spoiler, and it reminded me of all the things I started really disliking about Serial Experiments Lane. There was an alien episode, I suppose you would say. They started going into a whole backstory about Roswell, and it started becoming very strange from that point on for me. It started becoming more and more abstract. Things got stranger and stranger. I'll be honest, and I'm not saying this to bash on the show or anything. There's a reason why I never reviewed Serial Experiments Lane. It's because I don't feel I have the credentials to really review the show. Because I loved it. I loved it at first. But then it just got so confusing. It became incomprehensible. It reminded me a lot of what I felt about Neon Genesis Evangelion near the end, except this is actually, it holds up its artistic integrity. While I thought Neon Genesis Evangelion really lost its artistic value when it was nearing the end, with Serial Experiments Lane, it's still a fantastically made show. It's still masterfully directed. It's still wonderfully done. It just got so weird and so bizarre, and I lost my emotional connection with Lane, who was the entire reason I loved the show, was that I could look at Lane and I saw her, and she was just this character that I related to on such a deep and profound level that right away I was drawn into the world of Serial Experiments Lane. Then it got odd. Then it got very odd. And that's all I can really say about it. I was upset. I was deeply disappointed by the fact that it got as weird as it did. It's when I can't follow a plot, I hold myself pretty high on I'm able to comprehend things pretty well. I mean, I'm not dumb. I'm not slow. You can say all you want to in the comments and say, oh, you didn't understand Serial Experiments lame. Serial Experiments lame. No, you didn't understand lame. I I can't talk right now. You didn't understand Lane. You're dumb. You're this. You're that. No, it's just, I personally feel that shows should be able to be, movies, shows, books should be comprehensible during the first read-through or the first watch-through. You may not understand everything about the show or the book, but you should at least be able to get a grasp of it. With Lane, there was points where I was so lost, and the show did very little to kind of like grab my hand and say, this is what's going on right now, that honestly, I think it stopped being great. And there's nothing worse than when a show goes from being great to being a mess, an incomprehensible mess. The other show I wanted to get to, Bleach, and a lot of people are going to be really pissed off at me about this, but Bleach was one of those shows. First 24 episodes, I would even say 30 episodes, I thought were fantastic, hilarious shonen jump sort of anime. It was great stuff. The action was fantastic. The animation was great. The characters, you were drawn into these characters. Ichigo Kurosaki, this 15-year-old high school student, off fighting these soul, whatever the hell their names were, hollows, with Rukia, who's like this soul society hottie who's like following him around, and Orihime, and all those other characters. It was great. It was Ghostbusters with swords. And it was freaking awesome. And then it got into this whole, you must fight 50 other guys who are also Soul Reapers. And then all of a sudden being a Soul Reaper stopped being cool. And that's the biggest complaint you can make about something like this. Once the thing that was cool at first all of a sudden becomes really boring and really generic, and it's like every other macho guy in the world is a Soul Reaper, I lost interest. And why does every one of these anime have to boil down to, all right, now we have to have the epic fight with this main character has to fight like nearly every single guy on the face of the planet. And for some reason, even though he's supposedly fighting the strongest guy in the face of the world right now, that strongest guy in the face of the world is going to say, oh, you may have defeated me, but there are 50 billion other guys ahead of me. And if you defeat them, then you will be the strongest in the universe. But after you become the strongest in the universe, there will be somebody else stronger than you after that even. And the cycle will continue until you feel like putting a bullet in your brain. That's pretty much that is Bleach in a nutshell. Why they did this, why they took such a great show with such inspiring humor, with such good art style, with such great characters, and just decided to turn it into Dragon Ball Z is completely beyond me. I'm not saying that it became bad, because I still watched Bleach. I watched it up until like the first filler arc, and honestly, I don't think I'm going to watch the rest of the series. It just, it didn't grab me the same way it did. I felt as if, and it's hard saying this, that the writer had a different intention when he was first writing the series than he did later on. That he started running out of ideas, and so he drew from like the shonen book of cliches and just started throwing things on paper, just started basically doing a hack job and making whatever plot he possibly could. The stories in Bleach later on, during the Soul Society arc, to me, it was like we've seen this so many times. And I'm not saying we hadn't seen the Ghostbusters with sword kind of thing before, because that's pretty typical kind of anime-ish formula. But it had something there. It had character. It had personality. Bleach, it was like all of the personality and all of the hipness that show had was sucked out the minute Ichigo Kurosaki shows up in the Soul Society. That's all I'm saying. That's how I personally feel about it. It's when I was first reading the manga and when I was first watching the anime, I thought when Rukia was taken away that Ichigo was going to be in the Soul Society for about 3 episodes, and then he was going to save her. 50, 60 episodes later, and it was, for me, it was a disaster. It was like a train wreck. Why would you do that? Why would you stretch things out so much for no dramatic impact, for no point except to stretch things out. It felt so cheap. That's my personal word on it. And I'd like to hear about your guys's too. Which shows did you like absolutely love and adore at first, and then you ended up watching more and more of it, and you ended up just not liking it as much anymore, where it just lost that flair that initially grabbed you in? Make some video responses, or just leave comments. I don't care. I'm just kind of interested to hear it. This is Got a Little Breath, and I am signing out. Peace, love, and Bobby Sherman.